video is brought to you by the EA Creator Network. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm KiwiSimsKate. Kiwi because I'm from New Zealand, Sims because I love The Sims, and Kate because that's my name. This video is going to be a little bit different to my normal YouTube content. Today I want to share with you a little bit about my experience building not one, not two, but 3 official lots for The Sims 4 Adventure Awaits. We're going to go behind the scenes and maybe spill a bit of tea. I still can't believe I can even say that. And up front, I want to give a huge thank you to The Sims and EA for giving me this opportunity. It's genuinely been a highlight of my life and a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that I've dreamed about but never really believed I'd be able to do something like this. And the whole process, while there were some challenges, it was just the most fun. I feel like it was all wrapped up so quickly, so if The Sims want to hit me up again, I will clear my schedule. Before we go any further, I just want to make a disclaimer that all the game content that I share with you in this video, it's not the final version. I'm recording this with an early access version of the game, and I'm also using a shader in my game, so mine will look probably a bit different to yours. Earlier this year, I received an email. It seemed suspicious. Supposedly, it was from the Sims team. I was very dubious and thought there was a possibility it could even be a prank or a scam email. Turns out it was entirely legitimate, asking if I would be interested in joining an opportunity with the Sims. The details at that point were pretty basic, but of course, once I determined it was a real email, I jumped at the chance. I couldn't believe it. I was so surprised, taken aback. Where do we start? Sign me up. Yes, I'm in. How many times can I say yes before I seem way too keen? And I remember one of the first things I thought about after accepting was I was just really curious to see who else they'd asked to be a part of building for this pack. And luckily, we all got to meet each other in one of the very first online meetings. Also, luckily, the company I'm keeping with this pack in terms of builders, so elite. I was pretty humbled, to be honest, and to be able to share this experience with them it's just been the best thing ever. The other thing we got to do pretty early on in the process was meet the Sims team that were working on the pack. It was like meeting your idols. This game means a lot to me, and the people who create it I think are so special and put so much love and effort into these games. And so being able to collaborate with them on this was so cool. They shared with us some early concepts and inspiration that they had for Adventure Awaits, which at the time, bear in mind, it didn't even have that name. So we had been just generally referring to it as EP20 through most of the build process. It wasn't until quite a lot later, not long before it was announced publicly, that we also found out what the name of the pack was. So the devs have already actually talked a little bit publicly around their inspiration for this pack. And while it doesn't represent just one place in the world in particular, it definitely has some elements that are inspired by Australia, by US national parks, and of course by New Zealand. When I first learned that there was New Zealand influence in this pack, including some special native animal inspiration, I was so excited because, in case you didn't know already, I actually grew up in a zoo here in New Zealand, and no, I'm not pulling your leg. I promise it happened. And so as a kid, I was lucky enough to be surrounded by loads of native species as a child. And also we just had a really outdoorsy and adventurous upbringing in general. So this pack was perfect for me. It had my name on it already. I was allocated 3 lots to build on, and we got some briefs to get us started and get us thinking about how we would build these lots. One of my lots was this large 64 by 64 lot, which is actually the largest lot in the map, and at that point as well there were no names really on anything, so much later we found out what the names of the lots were, what the world was, what the pack was, etc. So this lot ended up being the Revive and Thrive Retreat, which is one of the new custom venues. Then I was also allocated 2 starter homes. This one down here, which you can see I've already moved a little family into. It's a 2-bedroom, 1 bathroom. It's called Fletcher's Cottage, and it's on a 30 by 20 lot. And then this one up here in a different neighborhood. This one is a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom. It's actually a starter plus, which I'll talk to you a little bit more about shortly, and that's called Miner's Manse. Each of our builds had certain requirements, and there were obviously some restrictions just in general that we had to stick to while we were building our lots. Some of the types of things that we couldn't do, for example, was use move objects cheat or even the alt placement. So everything we placed had to just snap to the grid. This was particularly painful for me when it comes to the landscaping. I love to pull together a few different plants here and there, create really luscious gardens, things that look a bit natural. But here we were quite limited to how close we could get items to each other. We also couldn't use too many different items on each lot. So this is around item count in terms of individual pieces. For example, wallpapers, they needed to be limited to just a few, 2 or 3 ideally through the whole build. Obviously, when I got to building my larger lot, that was trickier than maybe the smaller lots. And an interesting thing I actually learned through this process was that even the default wallpaper, the plain wall that just appears as soon as you place a wall, that counts as a wallpaper style. So when you're building something like a chimney space on the side of a home, which I've actually got in both of my starter homes, on the inside of that, even though your Sims don't go inside, that's not a room, you can't move into it or out of it, so it's not really useful in terms of gameplay. When it comes to building for the pack like this, the team actually advised that it's best to use a wallpaper you've used elsewhere in the build, whether it's a brick or timber siding, to use that even inside the chimneys and on the floors of the chimneys too. If you kept it as the default, that's adding on your lot as an additional style of wallpaper. Each of the neighborhoods as well had different stories behind them and the lore that the devs shared with us. So that helped us understand the world, get a picture of what kind of style of buildings would work with the surroundings, and we could build with that in mind. To be honest, I was kind of worried about building 2 starter homes. I'm pretty used to building fast and loose when it comes to simoleon usage. I don't often limit myself. I like to spend my simoleons. But in saying that, I do love a challenge, and I was lucky that the 2 starter homes were in separate neighborhoods. I was definitely keen to make sure that they looked and felt quite different from each other. The requirements I was given for the Miner's Manse starter home was to include 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, and it was a starter home. And I honestly thought they were joking. I remember writing to the Sims team and double checking and just saying, you sure there wasn't a typo in the brief? You definitely want 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms in a starter home, you know, as in less than 20,000 simoleons. I gave it a pretty good shot, and I did get it under budget, but I just felt it was looking a bit sad. Eventually, I think after the first submission of our builds, because we submitted and then we would receive feedback, and then we submitted and then we received feedback so we could iterate on our designs. The dev team thankfully buckled under the pressure that I gave them, and they did allow me to change the budget for this to be what they call a starter plus. It means you will need more than just the one sim to move in. I think you need 3 Sims to be able to afford this starter home, I believe, if you're not using cheats, obviously. So when it came to me trying to think of the specific style for my builds, the Sims team obviously gave us some really great provocation and concept art to start with. My first stop after that was good old Pinterest. So this is one of the Pinterest boards I made, and as you can see, I've named it Outdoor Retreat. Now, I did this because I was really nervous and paranoid that I would make a mistake, I would accidentally share this or show my screen somehow, and just accidentally blow my cover that I was working on a secret project for the 20th expansion pack. So I named it Outdoor Retreat in case anyone did see it. Then I could kind of explain it away. I could say, oh, these are just builds that, one day I want to build in Granite Falls. But in actual fact, I was secretly working away at some options for what my builds were going to look like. So you can see a lot of these here have a really contemporary rustic style, and that was sort of the language that the devs were sharing with us as well in terms of their inspiration. So I knew that in my starter homes, I wanted to reflect a couple of different versions of this. I knew I wanted to reflect a slightly more modern feel for Fletcher's Cottage, the one that's down by the waterfront, down by the downtown area, versus the Miner's Mint starter home. I wanted that to be slightly more on the traditional side and a little bit more rustic. I also had this separate board for inspiration for my fitness lot, because obviously this was going to be really different to my 2 starter homes. It's on the biggest lot in the world. It was also going to be a custom venue, one of the getaway new venues. It also had to have some very specific objects that the Sims team wanted me to include, and we got some really awesome new items with adventurer weights that a lot of Simmers I know have been asking for and requesting. We've now got things like the spin bikes, diving boards, free weights as well. So all 3 of those are included in the fitness lot. My inspiration for what is now known as the Revive and Thrive Retreat is sort of like a glamping tent feel, rustic cabins, but something that's a little bit more elevated. And the glamping tent idea was actually an idea from the Sims team from the start. So in the original brief of this lot, they suggested adding glamping tents, and I actually really have to thank them for steering me in the right direction. The first version, it was a little bit all over the place. You can see in this board, I've got a few that are sort of circular design. Down here, there's sort of like an octagonal shaped building. And actually my first version had that, but also mixed in with the A-frame glamping tents. I got some very helpful constructive criticism back from the team after my first submission. I'm really glad for the feedback, because once they said it, I realized they were totally right. And sometimes you need that outside eye. I was so in it. I had so many ideas in my head, and I was nervous the first submission, and I kind of packed all sorts of shapes and ideas. It was just not cohesive. And so what I did was I took the A-frame glamping tents and just used those as inspiration for the rest of my build. So whilst this was one of the most amazing experiences of my life, it didn't come without its challenges. I'm a big believer that when you build in The Sims, sometimes having constraints and restrictions, they can really help you to explore your creativity and maybe explore things that you wouldn't have normally thought of if you'd just had a blank space and could do, whatever you wanted without limitations. So I just want to share with you a few of my biggest challenges. Number 1, when we start building, we have a much earlier version of the game to build in. The map didn't quite look like it does now. When we started, it was a lot more sparse. There were also a lot of placeholder items. It was just a little bit challenging at the very beginning when we couldn't overtly see the overall vision of Gibby Point and of the world. Number 2, building 2 starter homes. It was a huge challenge. I was the only one tackling starter homes, and I had 2 of them, and not knowing exactly what everything was going to cost, that was challenging. I just had to make my best guess because, as I said, there's a lot of placeholder items as we go through, and during the process the game would get updates and more items would be added, or the prices would be adjusted or updated. But I love to add loads of personality and detail to my builds, and so pairing this right back to be able to build within budget was very difficult. Often when I'm building starter homes, I will just use tons of debug and live edit objects, which cost nothing anyway. Here I couldn't use any live edit or debug items. Number 3, performance requirements. Now this one was a biggie. Our builds had to be functional for players on all different types of computers and lower end specs in particular. So there was a bit of back and forth with performance, particularly on my Revive and Thrive Retreat lot, because it was so large, 64 by 64, it needed to have a certain amount of gameplay features to even make it interactive and enjoyable for players. And so I really tried to balance that by paring back a lot of the extra decorative items that I might normally have added to make sure that the build would actually function question in the performance tests. And if you'd be interested, I'm actually thinking about expanding on my Revive and Thrive retreat and adding, additional packs and other items, just filling up the lot a little bit more. Number 4, my biggest challenge, I would have to say, through this process was unfortunately my own self-doubt. And sometimes still, actually, looking back on my builds, I struggled to fully believe in them. I would go through sort of roller coaster of emotion, moments of being really excited, really proud, really pumped, and then moments of kind of asking myself if I really liked my builds. And for me, it was the biggest mind game to overcome and try and remind myself that this is an amazing opportunity. I wouldn't have been asked if they didn't think I could do it. And I just had to try and weaken those voices in my head. And I think all creative people hear those kinds of voices at some point. And it was certainly something that I struggled with. But despite all of those challenges, the process was so much fun. Overwhelmingly, it was just fun. It's a really weird feeling and experience having something that's gonna be in The Sims, my favorite game, one of the most popular games of all time. It's gonna be played globally, and a lot of those people won't have seen this video, won't even know who I am, won't maybe understand the inspiration that I drew from. So I did want to try and get my point of view across as much as possible in my builds themselves, because ultimately my builds are what are going to speak for me. So I hope this video was interesting for you all. It was really fun making it because finally I can share with you all what I've been having to keep secret for far too long. I'm obviously so excited for the release of The Sims 4 Adventure Awaits. Can't wait to see what you create with it, whether it's your own builds, whether it's adjusting our builds, playing with our builds, or even completely bulldozing them and starting again. Whatever you choose to do, I can't wait to see it. Let me know in the comments below what you're most excited for. And of course, if you are gonna pre-order or purchase The Sims 4 Adventure Awaits, or any other Sims content for that matter, on the EA app or thesims.com, you can use my creator code KiwiSimsKate in the promo box at checkout, and you'll be directly supporting me and my content. If you're not already, subscribe below, and if you did enjoy the video, give it a thumbs up, hit the notification bell to be warned of any future videos, and keep an eye out shortly for more videos. I'll be putting together some additional content for my builds. You can get a closer look at each, how I created them, what my inspiration was, as well as some more general videos showcasing other features of Adventure Awaits. And a final additional thank you to the Sims team and EA for allowing me to be a part of this. This has genuinely been one of the highlights of my entire life, and I've done some pretty great things in my life, but this one has gotta be near the top. So thank you so much for watching. Take care out there. Bye.